So good afternoon, Your Eminence. How are you today?
Good afternoon, George. I'm doing quite well. Thank you.
Good. So I'm speaking today to Metropolitan Nathanael, who is has the responsibility of running the Metropolitan of Chicago, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into this discussion. But I just wanted to. For the purpose of the people viewing this and to be completely transparent, I just will say that over the last year, our firm has had the opportunity of working with the Metropolis and work closely with you, and it's been a great privilege for not only me but the other individuals in our firm to work with you, and I thank you for that. As I indicated to you, Your Eminence, that when we first started doing these, we thought it was a time where there was a high level of anxiety, a high level of upsetment in different ways, shape, or form. And we just wanted to get a sense of what the pandemic, what COVID-19 has taught us about ourselves, taught us about the people that we work with and the people that we serve. So if you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about what has it taught you about Nathaniel as you've been navigating these last 9 months?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pandemic has challenged all of us. And in many ways, as the local hierarchy here of the Midwest for the Orthodox Christians, it has challenged me to kind of grow up fairly quickly. I became the Metropolitan at the age of 39, and a year and a half into that, there's a pandemic, a global pandemic, and you're forced to look at what's around you, what's important in life in different ways now. You almost have to have super focused vision on the challenges in front of you and kind of put other things on the shelf, prioritize what's important in life. And I've learned the importance of others in our lives. How we take for granted how many people we have around us and what they offer to us, not no longer seeing them, or if we ever did see them as a means to an end, to stop seeing them as that, because people are so precious in our lives, and COVID has separated us from so many people that are meaningful to each of us, our loved ones, our friends, our stewards of across our metropolis. And so I've learned to appreciate especially my clergy a lot more, try to see them more as colleagues and brothers, and less as just priests working out there in the middle of nowhere in the 6 states of our metropolis. I've learned that taking time out to listen to people is absolutely important. Taking time for people during this pandemic has been critical, to listen to them, to care for them, even if it's by phone. Just taking time for others. It doesn't matter the way we pastor anymore. It's taking time and finding ways to pastor. So I've learned the importance of others in my life even more. I would just say, I think one of the greatest lessons I've learned is the need to pivot, to quickly shift, to quickly to always be nimble enough so that if there's a need to change course, to be able to do that without necessarily losing sight of the ultimate goal. And I think many of us, most business owners, but clerics especially, have had to do that. We've had to shift, how we worship, how we pastor, how we preach the gospel. It's everything is changing, but the core of what we're doing is the same. So those are some things that I guess I could point to as lessons learned.
So I'm not worried about stumping you at all. So, but I just thought of something. So you grew up in New York City.
In the Bronx. The
In the
Bronx.
Bronx. I'm sorry, in the
Yeah,
Bronx.
I want to make sure we're clear where in New York City, because everyone thinks New York City is just Manhattan. I grew up in the Bronx, so.
And I grew up in Queens, as we've
Okay.
established. Yankees, Cubs. Have you?
I'm both. I am both. I mean, I am a Yankee for sure, Yankees fan, but I have learned to love the Cubs. So I'm both Yankees and Cubs. I'm not. I'll root for any home team now. Again, I'll root for the White Sox, but I don't think I'm a fan of the White Sox.
Okay.
I am a fan of the Cubs, though.
So this is a serious question, though, about New York and Chicago. I think they're two remarkable cities in so many different ways. But as you now look, you grew up in the Bronx in New York, and now you've lived and you lead from Chicago. How can you identify some levels of individuality about the two communities?
Well, I mean, you mean in general, New
Yeah,
Yorkers versus Chicagoans, or
you
the
can talk about
Orthodox?
the Orthodox Church,
Yeah.
or just in general, or both. However you.
So I think New York, the Orthodox Christians in New York are really tribal. They're very much about their own part of, especially with regard to their connection to the old country back home. They're very much about where you're from. Chicago.
Meaning what part of Greece?
What part of Greece? Yeah, the old country.
Okay.
The Greeks in Chicago, they're not. It's not. They're not about where I'm from, but unfortunately, we're really a divided community here in Chicago. I mean, we have incredible people who have made their way into or have gone beyond the Greek community and have found ways to help influence and support their local community, broadly defined. But, I think we're more divided here than in New York, even though they're more tribal in New York. Overall, I think New Yorkers are, street smart. One day we went into neighborhoods that one might consider here dangerous in Chicago, and I was just like, why? What's so bad about this neighborhood? The New York environment. Having a lot of people around you, having the subways, the buses, and being on riding the subway, riding the bus, walking, down the streets of Manhattan in the Bronx. You pick up things. Instinctively, you understand your environment. You understand when something's off. You know how to help people. So New Yorkers have a lot of street smart. Oftentimes they're considered cold and careless, but they're not. I think New Yorkers are really, really caring people. It's just they're focused on where they got to go to for the day. Chicago, and I think the Midwest in general, the pace is slower. And I think they are really, really caring out here in the Midwest and Chicago. Our people, in general, people are a lot more eager to talk to you, to wave to you. I mean, when I go jogging, everyone's like waving. Hey, do they know me? Why do they say hi to me? So they're a lot friendlier in their expression of their how they want to be friendly. They're more outgoing in the Midwest, but in New York, they're friendly as well. I mean, if you need help, someone's going to stop and help you, but you just have to ask for it,
Yeah. Not a lot of waving in Manhattan.
No. Not a lot of waving in Manhattan.
So, one of the things to just explain to the viewers briefly, you talked about 6 states, and while I knew that, it was interesting to hear you just pinpointed. There are 6 states that fall under your responsibility, and about 50 churches. Is that right? About 50 churches?
58. 58.
58 churches. Okay. So the level, the Cardinal Archbishop of Chicago has everything right in the Catholic Church, everything right there. It's right there, and you're so decentralized. That must have, particularly now, it must have created some additional challenges for you.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinal Supich is, every time I see him, I say, I envy you, because his diocese or archdiocese is Lake and Cook County. I
Yeah.
mean, he can visit any of his church in less than an hour's time by car. We have 6 states. Indeed, most of our churches are in the Chicagoland area, but we do have at least 50%, I would say, outside of a 2-hour drive. And it's been a challenge with COVID, because we couldn't travel by plane. It means I have to do a lot more driving. But that's life. I mean, it's part of how we operate. I'm getting ready to go down for a 5-day trip to the Missouri area to visit my churches down there. And so it's actually, on the one hand, I was a bit frustrated because I couldn't visit my churches as I planned, especially during Lent and the Easter season and the summer months. But now that everyone's working from home, I can be on the road for 4, 5, 6 days and not miss anything that's going on in the office. So it's kind of a blessing in disguise, the way we're all working via distance more and more.
Right. One of the things that I heard about is Project Hope, which I think you started. Talk to us a little bit about Project Hope and what precipitated that.
Yeah, I don't know if I started it. I mean, it started during my tenure here. Project Hope was the result of a couple of people who wanted the church to be more intentional and in its philanthropy and broader in its reach. And some people approached me and said, we want to get involved, but we want to get involved in philanthropy. And we see philanthropy as the kind of the carrot to engage young adults, young professionals, and bringing them back to the church, engaging them as well. So we started this out of one of my local churches. It was sparked by one of my priests who was here formerly. It was also part of the idea was also part of a leadership training program that 20 people from my Metropolis were fortunate enough to participate in at Tufts University at the Fletcher School through the generosity of the Faith Endowment.
That's when I first met you.
Yeah, exactly. We went in Boston. Right. Yeah. So the idea of, came from a couple of different people. It was organized by that priest. It was a lot of the kind of leadership skills were learned at that Tufts University program, again at the Fletcher School through the Faith Endowment. And we came back. We started off very small at a little local church in Chicago, and from there now we've expanded and we've created partnerships with civic leaders, local vendors. Ecumenical partnerships have broadened, and we are entering, underserved communities, food deserts, helping people more and more have more stable housing. And so we're still at the infancy stage, I would say, of the program, but we are hopeful that Project Hope will continue to grow, and so that we can offer and share the blessings that we received from God with everyone around us. And Chicago, like most major cities, has gone through a lot. So we thought there was even more of an urgent need for us to be out there, caring for our neighbor. And everyone is our neighbor. It's not just Greeks. So Project Hope was helping us, look at each other as God's images. And we're all children of God, and we're each other's keepers. So Project Hope gives us the opportunity to help others.
You know, back in early 2020, you and I would spend time together on the phone or Zoom, sometimes in person, kind of talking about how you would continue to evolve in your position as Metropolitan. One of the challenges that you spoke about, and we talked at length, was your schedule and managing your schedule, managing your life. So, and that was all pre COVID-19. So,
Yeah.
did it just become, more challenging, or did it just change in terms of, you dealing with the day-to-day responsibilities of your position?
Well, look, as I said, COVID-19 allowed us, gave me at least more room to, it created more space in life, right? Because people weren't coming to visit, because I couldn't go visit people, I had more time to do things that were essential. I still think I need help with my scheduling and managing my own time and my own growth. But I would say that as I'm still working on trying to create a better routine, a more efficient, effective routine in life. I mean, I'm an animal of habit. Is that what the saying? I when I start doing something, I like to continue that pattern. And so I'm still refining that, trying to figure out how to be a more effective leader. It does mean trusting my staff more. And, again, as a new hierarch, a new bishop, it's very difficult. The urge is to always kind of micromanage and always be involved in everything. And, more and more, I think with greater experience and collaboration with my team, I'm beginning to trust them more, give them more, and I can then focus on more of the strategic vision of our church and, looking at developing, long-term goals for us. But I do remember our conversations, and they were super. I mean, I look back and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I was struggling with this, but I was struggling with something. I needed help, I needed advice, and I got it. And you were really, really helpful as a leader yourself to help me kind of gain better clarity and focus. So I appreciate
one of the things that I learned with the elevation of Bishop Timothy, which congratulations to you, and of course congratulations to Bishop Timothy, that he spoke about how much he had learned from you. And I think that's a great compliment, given the fact that he is I don't even know how old he is, but he's north of 50. He's north of 50, right?
I tell him that if you were married, young, and had kids, you're old enough to be my father. And he looks at me with a grumpy face, but he's old enough to be my dad. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's great that he's learned from you, and I'm sure conversely you've learned from him.
Yeah, look, I think he was very generous in his compliments at his ordination, and I was humbled by his words. I know he meant them. We make a good team, and I don't know what I have to offer him, but I know that I've learned a lot from him. He's been a priest, a cleric in our metropolis for close to 40 years, so he knows this place really, really well. So I've learned a lot. He's kind of he's not afraid to say, hold on, suggest different approaches to things. And I am really grateful to have him by my side. And now as a bishop, he can do a lot more that he couldn't do before. So as I'm going to be away for 6-7 days, there's the presence of a hierarch in the Chicagoland area. Even though the Metropolitan is gone, he can fill in if there's ever the need for a bishop's voice at anything.
Is there anything tangible that you've seen in terms of the need for spiritual nourishment that either you've observed on the part of your flock, people who are part of your the Orthodox Church in Chicago, or even as you look at yourself and you see needs for spiritual nourishment that's different than because this clearly there will be many books and many studies done on what this has done to our society, good and bad. And it's just beginning. We're not even out of it yet, and we may see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to be a while still. So, talk to me about that. How you've observed other people and how you see it directly affecting the whole quest or need for spiritual nourishment.
You mean COVID, the COVID pandemic?
Yeah. I'm sorry. As a result of the COVID-19.
Yeah, I think, of course, with the lockdowns that began in March and continued for many months until part of the summer, I mean, our churches in our metropolis felt the need to be responsible citizens, responsible neighbors for each other. So, we participated in the closures. I mean, it was unfortunate that the state couldn't understand how essential church is and faith is. And so early on, we were not considered essential workers. We were not considered essential operations. Later on, they realized that faith indeed matters. And for people's mental health, their spiritual well-being, emotional, but also just the philanthropic work that churches do. I mean, you shut them down, you now have not only people not going to church, but you also have people who aren't being fed, clothed, cared for. So we were happy that eventually things opened up. But I will say that our people needed the church and still need the church. We have limited capacity right now in our churches due to social distancing measures and stuff. But I can tell you, our churches have an online registration kind of reservation system to attend services, and they're always sold out. I mean, there isn't enough space for the people who want to come to church. But what also came out interestingly is the need for our people to be recatechized. I mean, our people don't know what they believe in. I mean, quite frankly, most people, their faith is just things that they've learned through habit. They don't know the essence. They don't understand why they're Orthodox. They know how to be Orthodox. They know what things to do and how to do their cross and what to do when they get to church, but they don't understand that, they don't understand why they do this, and they don't understand that its significance to the rest of the world. And so what I've observed is a lot of, pseudo theology, putting faith in, questioning science even, saying that no one can get sick if they believe in God. I mean, we don't believe that as Christians. You can get sick, it's part of life. And so the fact that our people don't know their faith as well as they should, they can't live it as authentically as they should, especially during a crisis like this. You get all sorts of crazy ideas and teachings and stuff, misleading people, and then as a result, you have people doing reckless things that not only endanger their lives, but also their neighbors, literally the people around them.
So I grew.
Yeah.
So I grew up I'm going to pick up on something you said. I grew up in the diocese of Brooklyn, which is Brooklyn and Queens.
Yeah.
Our firm over the years have worked extensively in that diocese. I guess my question is, do you have any opinion? Have you been following the recent Supreme Court ruling about, and it was I guess jointly put forth by the Hasidic community in Brooklyn and the Diocese of Brooklyn, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Brooklyn. Any thoughts on that? The way the Supreme Court chose to rule?
Well, I know Bishop Nicholas from my days in New York, and I'm glad that he and others got together and appealed to the courts, because that's what it means to be an American. I mean, that's where we have laws and courts. And as I said, the churches were, I would say, not religious traditions, houses of worship, I think were inappropriately, I don't want to say targeted, but they felt extreme pressure by elected officials. I mean, there was no concern about what their orders do to houses of worship and communities of faith. So I'm glad that they took their case to the highest court of the land, and I think that in their wisdom, the judges ruled in the way that preserves the law of the land. And I don't know, how it could be applied. I'm still working with our legal team to kind of understand how it impacts us. But clearly, from what I gather, at least initially, the courts, recognized religious freedom and the ability for religions to operate and congregate and to not be restricted, at least not restricted, in the unfair way that they were up to that point. So, and I know in Brooklyn they were overly restricted. In Chicago, I have a church in Chicago. I have numerous churches in Chicago. The mayor here in Chicago allows us to only have 50 people. I have a church that could hold over 1,000 people. And they're saying, well, tough, you could only have 50 people. That doesn't make sense. So I understand the need, especially in hot zones, right, where the virus is spiking, to be even more cautious. But I just think we have to use common sense also and trust that these communities are going to do the right thing. And if we don't do the right thing, that's when I think, the officials can come in and do whatever they have to have us abide by the best practices as issued by the CDC and others. But I'm glad that the communities went to the Supreme Court. I'm hopeful that this will help us potentially expand how many people can attend services. But honestly, I also want us to be very careful and understand that this doesn't mean we have the green light to do whatever we want. I mean, we've got to remain responsible co-citizens. We are each other's keepers. And I don't feel that it's appropriate for my churches to open up and say, no limit, come as you want, and not have any measures in place. And that I think is the other extreme of, over restrictions and no restrictions at all. So we have to do the right thing, restrict our own wants so that we can meet each other's needs, I would say. And I think the Supreme Court kind of helped bring some balance to this now.
How have you acclimated, Your Eminence, to virtual liturgy?
Well,
is there still some going on? I know.
No, we have in-person services. I mean, we do. I mean,
okay.
As I said, we have much fewer people in attendance, but we do have, our churches are allowed to have people, so we follow what the law allows. But early on, it was really demoralizing, to be honest with you, to celebrate Easter or Pascha with just 3 people. I mean, going out there and giving a sermon and no one out there, to look at, to bless the people, and no one there to receive the blessing, but doing it to the people at home. I mean, it's not what we're not built for that. I mean, we're social beings, and worship is an act of it's a social act of worship. So I had a hard time with it personally. I know that there are people who have benefited from the virtual services because they're at high risk, and so we're going to continue to offer the virtual option. But I have to say, many of my priests, even I could tell many of them were getting really frustrated not having parishioners in the pews. And it showed in their work. It showed in our interactions. They were really, really upset. And after the first day, when people were welcomed back and we opened up our doors again, you could see the priests could breathe again.
So let me ask you a little bit about some temporal issues, and that gets to the issue of stewardship and philanthropy. How has been what has been and how have people reacted to an outreach on your part or others within the Metropolitan for support during this time?
Well, once COVID-19, so I was just, as a backstory, I was in Australia in January of last year, and they were talking about this new virus in Asia, and they were talking about it all the time on the local Australian news. It wasn't on the U.S. radar that early, but I realized, because I studied public health, I realized there was something going on, in Asia. And on the way back from Australia in late January, I started to think, this is going to affect our people. This is going to affect our families. This will have an impact on the finances of our parishes, of our families. And so we started to do an analysis of what we might lose if we couldn't come together. I mean, literally, we were thinking about this in early February, January, February. If we couldn't light a candle, if I couldn't go to church, if I couldn't make a donation, how would this impact our communities and as a result, impact our philanthropy? So we made a decision as a metropolis to stop fundraising for our own needs, for my offices and my operations, and to pivot again quickly and start raising funds for our parishes. And this was the first time that we launched a grassroots effort to try to receive virtual gifts, online gifts. And we set an internal goal of about $50,000. We said, if we raise $50,000, that's great, because there wasn't a track history. There wasn't, the trust is still being built, since my arrival. So we weren't sure what we would get, but thank God people responded very generously, and we raised approximately $270,000. And we're now able to. We've provided aid to our parishes. We're going to continue to do that, and I think as the Metropolitan, my job is to empower my parishes. If I have money in the coffers, it doesn't make sense if I have parishes that are struggling, and if I can help my parish help people, I'm going to do that. So we're shifting. We shifted during the COVID outbreak, and I think we're going to stay there. We're going to start to fundraise again for our operations because we need that. But I think we're not going to stop fundraising for the grassroots parish needs as well. So I'm going to use my pulpit, so to speak, to capture the small gifts for our local parishes. And we'll take big gifts too, by the way.
I do know that I do understand that we continue to work with you, and it's a great honor. And I know Steve Mahalik and Melvin Rodakis enjoy, and I guess Shannon Marcotte from our team continues to work with you, and they all enjoy working with you and your team. And for that, I just want to thank you for the confidence that you continue to place in us. And I think we have great opportunities ahead of us.
Well, I enjoy working with you and your team. They're phenomenal. They're professionals. They're working with the Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, that hasn't traditionally done this. I think maybe the Catholics have done this, other religious groups have done this, other nonprofits have worked with firms like yours in the past. But for us, this is very new. But we realize that if we're going to start to make a greater difference, a more meaningful impact on society, we need to kind of graduate to that level. And so we're really glad to be working with you, to have you walking us through the steps and helping us learn how to be a helping us help others be more philanthropic intentionally, rather than being transactional, being more relational in our interactions with people.
Well, Your Eminence, look, I again, let me thank you sincerely for your time. I do know how challenging your schedule is day in, day out. So you giving me a little bit of your time today is a significant gift. Any other thoughts in closing about your ministry today? Any additional reflections?
Um, I'm very grateful that we're entering 2021, but there's no guarantee that 2021 isn't going to be more difficult and more challenging, and that somehow it's going to, the virus is going to end and life will go back to normal. There's no guarantee that that will be the case, but we do know that I hopefully everyone has learned important lessons in 2020. We've worked on those muscles that are, those who work out there. We have small muscles, not just the biceps and the chest, but there's small muscles in your arm that you need to work on to be stronger. And I think 2020 gave us that opportunity to work on these muscles that we've ignored most of our lives. It gives us the opportunity to refocus our attention on what's really important in life. And I think that for me, it's people, it's our people, and we have to care for one another. And hopefully these lessons in 2021 will come in handy, and we will do a better job. We will be more Christ-like, more Christian in our approach to everything we do. So I'm really grateful in many ways. As much as I'm glad to see 2020 go, I'm really grateful to God that, we endured this. He allowed this. It's part of life, right? But I'm really grateful that hopefully we've learned our lessons, and care for each other more in 21.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you.
Thank you.